In the last several years as a video journalist, I've traveled the world and eaten some unforgettable foods.
That's granadilla.
Things that I would recreate at home when I wasn't ready to be home. So with each recipe, I'll also give you a movie, a TV show, book, music, or all of them to pair with your food for a full cultural immersion.
That's the stuff that changes your life. That's what that is.
We may all be grounded for now, but we don't have to stop traveling. Khachapuri. It's not Khachapuri with a K, it's Khachapuri. It's Georgia's national dish. I made it to Tbilisi, folks. Here I am. I am going to show you how to make one, and my recipe is a combination of recipes that I've read from other chefs and also things that I saw, things that I witnessed when I was in Georgia. I saw how people were making it, I tasted all the different variations. It's a little bit of everything. So when I went to Georgia in 2018, I was reporting in Georgia, but within like the first meal, I was introduced to Khachapuri.
First meal, are we ready? Not even 24 hours into our first meal.
And this is Emirati Khachapuri.
And there's cheese inside this?
Yeah, I can show you. Oh, doesn't open.
That looks good.
I think I had Khachapuri at every single meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, in every town, in every restaurant. And I fell in love instantly because it's like, what's not to love? It's bread, it's cheese, it's egg, it's butter. And the cheese was unlike any cheese I'd ever had before.
Just tear it?
Break it with your hands, like break it and then put it there. And then
Oh my god, this is so good. Sean, you have to try this.
And then Khachapuri went social media viral. I mean, like, everybody was making Khachapuri. Sometimes it was presented as just like, wow, look at this Instagrammable food. Khachapuri is actually really, really, really important to the country of Georgia. There's many different ways you can make Khachapuri. There's round, like you saw in my video. There's a boat shape. That's the one that went social media crazy. But then there's also Khachapuri that has it looks more like a calzone, like it's covered. Every region has its own way of making Khachapuri. The one that went social media viral in the boat shape, that comes from a very specific region. So I think it's Ajarian Khachapuri or Ajaruli Khachapuri. If I'm screwing it up, I'm sorry. So here's the cultural context. It's not only their national dish, but it's so important to the country that economists in Georgia have created a Khachapuri index, meaning that they gauge the rate of inflation in the country based on how high or low the ingredients to make Khachapuri are. Everybody eats it, from like the rich folks in Tbilisi. Well, there's not very many rich folks in Tbilisi, but the people who are doing okay in Tbilisi, and like the farmers and the herders and the people living in the really rural parts of the country, they all eat Khachapuri. Anyway, Georgia is a very, very special country to me. It's very unique. I want more people in the world to know about Georgia and Georgian culture.
perfect!
Without further ado, we're gonna learn how to make Khachapuri. I don't think there's really like a right or wrong way to do Khachapuri. I don't think, like speaking as a non-Georgian, because it seems like it's one of those foods that every region has its own version of, and then within that region, like every neighborhood, and then within that neighborhood, like every family. Maybe there's no right or wrong. Watch, every Georgian person on YouTube is gonna find this video and blast me in the comments telling me that I've done it wrong. You could do this by hand if you want to. I like using the mixer. Screenshot this if you want to do it later. 250 grams of strong bread flour. 1.5 teaspoons of instant yeast, the rapid rise kind, plus 1 whole egg. I don't know how controversial this part's gonna be. I'm doing milk and a little bit of Greek yogurt because I saw someone doing it. Oh, that was such a... So I'm gonna do 1/4 cup of milk and 1/4 cup of Greek yogurt, and then 1/2 cup of water. So there's actually a lot of liquid in this dough. And last, half a teaspoon of salt. So this next part follows dry ingredients together and wet ingredients together. And the first thing you do is put all the dry ingredients in the bowl. And before you do anything else, you create a well with your hand in the bowl. Just kind of push it around and make a circle. Then dump the yeast into that little circle. Put the egg into the little circle. The Greek yogurt and the milk into the little circle. You get this now, right? Like all the wet ingredients are going to go into that little well you created. Then the mixer goes on the lowest speed possible, and only after a few seconds, then you add in the salt. You don't want to do this before because salt in direct contact with yeast can kill it. This is a really dry dough, so you're probably going to have to add like teaspoon by teaspoon, just a little bit more water until you start to see it kind of come together. It's still going to be dry and shaggy, but it should be more composed than this. Like I said, teaspoon by teaspoon, very, very gradually. What you should come out with is dough that's formed and together, but it's still a little bit sticky. It's tacky. It'll stick to your fingers. Okay, this is my favorite part. Now we knead the dough. If you've never kneaded dough before, it's easier than it looks and sounds. So, unfloured surface, push it with the palm of your hand and then pull it back to yourself. Push it with the palm of your hand and then pull it back. Over and over again until the dough starts to take a new smooth shape. So after a few minutes of working the dough and kneading it, it's gonna start becoming really smooth. It's not like coming apart in my hands. Do you remember what it looked like when we started? It was totally different. It was shaggy, it was unformed, it was sticky. All in all, it should take 5 to 10 minutes of this, but it's amazing how it transforms in such a short time. Now, if you've been doing this and it's not really coming together the way it should, you're still having trouble with it, there's a different technique you can use, which honestly is way more fun. That's right, slap it. Be rough with it. Just smack it against the counter, take all your aggressions out on it, smack it, roll it, pull it back to yourself, smack it. Eventually, it will come together in that perfectly smooth ball. The dough just needs to rest now, so we're gonna cover it and let it sit at room temperature for about an hour, sometimes up to an hour and a half, just to let it rise, let the gluten rest. And in that time, it should double in size. While the dough is resting, we will assemble the ingredients for the filling. When I was in Georgia, I tried Khachapuri with many different kinds of cheeses in them. I'm not exactly sure what they all were. I think I definitely tasted some that had feta in them, some that definitely had mozzarella or the Georgian equivalent. I think it doesn't really matter what kind of cheese you put in here, as long as it's white and salty. So postscript note here, the traditional Georgian cheeses that are used are called sulguni or imeruli, which is what we were making here when I visited the family in the mountains. I've never seen or heard of them outside of Georgia, so here are the alternatives. I've got Israeli feta, which is very strong and very briny and very salty. These are mozzarella balls. I just happened to have this, so it's gonna go in there. And then ricotta. So I'll preface this by saying I'm giving measurements, but I think, again, this is one of those things that just kind of, you feel it out. You put however much feels good to you. If you want to put more feta than ricotta, do that. If you want to use more mozzarella than ricotta, do that. I'm just kind of ballparking it here. So you think with all this cheese and the added egg that this would be like khachapuri would be like a breakfast food in Georgia, but it's actually not. It's actually supposed to be eaten for dinner. This will just sit on the side while we go back to the dough, which is definitely ready. Get out. So you can tell that the dough is ready because this one has more than doubled. It's almost tripled its size, and it's full of air. So to prepare it now, we're gonna knock out that air and then let it sit for another 30 minutes. Same kneading technique as before, but you can do it a little bit lighter this time. When you knock the air out, it pretty much reduces back down to its original size. This recipe creates enough dough to split it into 2 parts, so you'll actually come out with 2 loaves. Flour your work surface, and then just let the dough balls sit for another 20 minutes or so.
In the last 20 minutes, you'll notice that the balls of dough have risen and grown again.
Just before I roll out dough, I like to test it to see if the gluten is ready to be rolled. So if you've tried to roll it and you notice that the dough rolls out and then immediately springs back to exactly where it was before you rolled it, that means that the gluten hasn't relaxed enough, and you should give it a little bit more time before you try to actually roll it out.
So once your dough reaches that point of readiness, you can start to roll it out, stretch it out. I like to use my hand sometimes. I think it's even more effective. You're just going to keep doing this process of stretching and rolling and stretching and rolling. We're going to make that classic boat shape, the one that you always see on Instagram. Start placing the filling about an inch from the edge of the dough and roll it onto itself. You want to get some of that filling enclosed in the crust. Then pinch the ends together to form that classic boat shape, and then keep filling the inside. The boat shape is no accident, by the way. The region of Ajara, where this comes from, is partially on the Black Sea, so the boat shape is said to be for good luck and abundant harvests from the fishermen. This is a base recipe, so from here you can pretty much do what you'd like, but traditionally there would be some herbs sprinkled on top, like thyme. This bakes at 425 degrees for about 15 minutes. Then pull the khachapuri out of the oven.
It smells amazing!
Make a well with a spoon and pour the egg inside the well. After 5 minutes, or until the surface of the egg firms up, pull it out.
To top it off, just like they did in Georgia, stick a whole thing of butter in there. This is not a low-calorie meal.
It is decadent, and you can taste every flavor in here. When it's piping hot, the cheeses melt together, the butter sticks to your lips, the bread is soft and chewy. And now, the movie. It's called The Trader, on Netflix. It's a beautiful short documentary that follows the life of a man living in rural Georgia who trades potatoes for the essential items in everyday life. Actually, now that I say that, there's 2 things that I want you to watch.
The next thing that I want you to watch, I have to take you back over there. Oh. Another thing you have to watch to really understand Georgian culture. This is Georgia's national dance team. I actually did a story on them when I was in Georgia. If you want to know anything about Georgian culture or like who they are as Georgian people, what the dancers do is they act out Georgian history. They act out years of conflict that Georgia has had with Russia, and they do it in such an artistic, beautiful way. They dance on their toes, they battle with real swords. So, enjoy your khachapuri and enjoy your dive into Georgian culture. Happy travels.